There are places whose names alone can send chills down your spine. Among them, the mortuary is seen as a fragile boundary between life and death, light and shadow, what we know and what we may never understand. In today's video, you'll join us in exploring 3 strange and chilling stories told by people who have worked night shifts in such places. The first story is about Matt, a night shift security guard whose routine seemed ordinary. But exactly at 3 a.m., the door was knocked on, 3 steady knocks. When Matt opened it, no one was there. Only wet, cold footprints leading straight to the body storage room. The second story belongs to Ethan, a college student working part-time at the Blackwood mortuary. All he had to do was check the cameras and lock the doors. But in the middle of the night, someone called his name from room 4, the very room that the previous shift warned him about. No matter who calls, don't open that door. And finally, there's Ryan, a surveillance technician who accidentally recorded movement from a coffin that had been sealed shut. What's worse, that video no longer existed in any folder after that night. If you're watching this video, thank you for being here. And if you subscribe to the channel, know that it's more than just a small gesture. It's the fuel that keeps us going, telling the eerie, mysterious, and haunting stories you love. So turn off the lights, put on your headphones, and get ready to enter a world where the darkness might just be watching you back. Matt, a man in his 30s, had worked as a freelance security guard for over a decade. He was no stranger to overnight shifts, be it in cold warehouses or abandoned parking lots. But no place had ever made him feel as uneasy as this mortuary. The building stood isolated at the end of a long, narrow alley, silent and time-worn. Overgrown trees surrounded it, and the night wind often howled through the iron fence, sounding eerily like whispers. Rumors said strange things had happened there, but Matt dismissed such talk as scare stories. That night, Matt took over the shift close to 11 p.m. The previous guard, a gaunt, hollow-eyed man, barely glanced at him before thrusting the keys into his hand and rasping a warning in a hoarse voice. Lock the front door tight after midnight, and whatever you do, don't open it if you hear knocking. Before Matt could ask anything, the man had vanished into the night. Matt stood there, frowning in confusion, then shrugged it off, assuming it was just some weird joke. His area included a small office and a corridor leading to the cold chamber where the bodies awaited their funerals. At night, everything fell into an unnerving stillness. Even the ticking of the wall clock seemed unnaturally loud. Around 2:30 a.m., Matt was in the security room watching the surveillance footage when the monitors flickered. The screen shook for a few seconds before stabilizing, but the lighting in the rooms appeared dimmer than usual. Matt felt a twinge of unease but reassured himself, old equipment. Happens all the time. Then, at exactly 3 a.m., knock, knock, knock. A slow, steady knocking echoed from the front door. Matt froze. Who would come to a mortuary at this hour? He grabbed his flashlight and went to the door. When he opened it, no one was there. Only a blast of cold wind hit his face, and under the faint light of the gate lamp, he saw wet footprints, clear, rounded prints, leading from the gate deep into the hallway, toward the cold chamber. Matt's heart began to race. He turned to look. The prints were still there, the moisture seeping into the grimy tile floor. No sound, no shadow, but something was watching him from the dark, waiting. Matt stood motionless for a few seconds, trying to swallow the icy chill crawling up his spine. He returned to check the camera system, but strangely, Every monitor now displayed a no signal error. The screens were pitch black. The indicator lights were still blinking, meaning power was fine. So why the disconnect? Taking a deep breath, Matt gripped his flashlight tightly and followed the wet footprints. They trailed from the front door along the main corridor, then veered left, straight toward the body storage room. The floor grew colder beneath his feet. The walls were stained with damp patches, and the flickering fluorescent lights above buzzed like they were on the verge of dying. Matt walked slowly, his flashlight tracing each footprint. At the final turn, he stopped abruptly. The cold chamber door was ajar. A narrow gap allowed his flashlight beam to slip through, casting a blurry glow on the floor. Matt's heart pounded in his chest. He knew for a fact that the door was always secured with two locks, an external bolt and an electronic keypad. No one was allowed to open it, especially not at night. But now, it stood open, as if inviting him in. Summoning every ounce of courage, Matt pushed the door gently. A rush of cold air burst out, thick like mist. Inside the small room, metal body drawers lined both walls. The silence was suffocating, broken only by the wheezing hum of the ventilation fans. And then he saw it. One drawer, second from the bottom, was half open. Matt stepped closer. His hands trembled as he raised the flashlight. A body lay flat inside, shrouded completely in a white sheet. But at the head, the sheet had been pulled aside, as if someone had just peeled it back. Trying to stay calm, Matt reached out to push the drawer shut. Clack! A sharp sound snapped behind him, making Matt jolt. He spun around. Another drawer, about 10 feet away, had just opened by itself. Inside, it was empty. Before he could react, the flashlight in his hand flickered rapidly, then died. The entire room plunged into darkness, and in that moment, from behind him, a freezing breath brushed the back of Matt's neck. Then came the sound of slow, wet footsteps, echoing from the far end of the hallway, where he had just walked through, where he knew no one had been. With no time to think, Matt stumbled backward, tripped, then scrambled to his feet and ran out. Just before turning away, he glanced back one final time through the narrow opening of the cold chamber door. A pale hand was slowly pulling it shut. Matt sprinted through the freezing hallway, his heart pounding like it was about to explode from his chest. He didn't dare look back. Each footstep on the tiled floor felt as if something were trying to drag him down. As he neared the security room, he slammed the door shut, locked it with all 3 bolts, and collapsed into the chair, clutching his head, trying to calm down. But there was no peace. At that moment, the knocking returned. Knock, knock, knock. Still the same familiar rhythm, slow, deliberate, as if someone knew he was terrified. Matt jolted and turned toward the frosted glass. No one there. But this time, the knocking didn't come from the front door. It came from behind him, from the window right next to the security room. He slowly turned around. A pale, lifeless face was pressed against the glass. Its eyes are wide open, no pupils, no expression. But the way it stared at Matt, it was as if it had known him for a long time. When Matt blinked, it vanished. Shocked, he turned on every light in the area, then rushed into the control room, desperately trying to reboot the camera system. After a few flickers, one of the screens finally came back on. The front hallway camera began replaying footage from 15 minutes earlier. Matt watched closely. He saw himself, flashlight in hand, following the footprints. But when the footage reached the moment he stood in front of the cold chamber door, a shadow glided behind him. No sound, no motion alert, no door opening. It just drifted, like a wisp of white smoke, brushing past Matt's shoulder before vanishing into the concrete wall. Matt held his breath. He rewound the footage and zoomed in on the frame. The face of the shadow slowly came into view. A man in a white uniform with dried bloodstains around his collar. His face pale, eyes wide open, bloodshot like congealed red syrup. The most horrifying part, it was the same man who'd been lying in the half-open drawer. Matt froze. There was no mistake. That face, that stare, he had seen it in the death report just yesterday. The man's name was Trinh Van Hoang, 45 years old, who died in a traffic accident and had been delivered to the mortuary exactly at 3 a.m. the previous day. Matt stood still. The words of the previous guard echoed in his mind. Don't open the door unless you're sure it's someone you know. But Matt had opened it. And now, the thing that knocked had no intention of leaving, because it had found someone who saw it. Matt couldn't remember exactly how he got out of the mortuary. All he knew was that by dawn, he was back at the company's main security office, clothes filthy, face ghostly pale, eyes hollow. His co-workers rushed him to the psychiatric hospital. Doctors diagnosed him with acute psychosis, panic triggered by extreme stress. Matt said nothing for the next 3 days. When he finally spoke, the first words he uttered were, "I saw him. He wants me to take over his shift forever." No one understood what Matt meant, but from that day on, he never went near another mortuary again. He quit his job, cut off all contact with friends, and lived alone in a small, run-down rental on the outskirts of town. It seemed like everything was over, until one night at exactly 3 a.m. The knocking returned. Knock, knock, knock. Matt woke up drenched in sweat. He rushed to the door, no one there. But the floor of his apartment was soaking wet. Circular, wet footprints, cold and identical to that night, had reappeared. Matt stared down the empty hallway. Across the building, the corridor lights flickered, and through the window glass stood a man in a white uniform, perfectly still, staring straight at him. Pale face, blood-red eyes. The neck was still stained with dried blood, and on his lips, a very slow, very wide smile. Ethan, a final-year information technology student, wasn't the kind of person who scared easily. After 2 years of taking night shifts through a gig app, he'd grown used to long, lonely nights. Parking lots, abandoned warehouses, even old hospitals. If the pay was good, Ethan didn't care where he worked. That evening, at 8:45 p.m., a notification popped up on his phone. Urgent shift, 11 p.m. to 6 a.m. Location, Blackwood Mortuary. The pay was double the usual rate. Without hesitation, Ethan tapped accept. It's just a mortuary, he told himself. Only people who aren't alive anymore. It was drizzling when he arrived. Blackwood Mortuary sat at the end of a narrow road, tucked behind a row of ancient trees. The building was old and quiet, so silent that Ethan's footsteps echoed as he walked up. An elderly man stood waiting at the gate, wrinkled skin, emotionless face. Without much small talk, he handed Ethan the keys and whispered, almost like muttering to himself, "The light in room 4 is still on. Don't go in. Even if someone calls, don't answer." Ethan frowned. "I thought I was just supposed to check cameras and lock the doors." The man didn't reply. He stepped back, gazed blankly at Ethan for a few more seconds, then turned and walked away. No explanation. Ethan stood there for a moment, listening to the wind whistle through the rusty eaves, carrying a strange metallic scent. Inside, the mortuary's narrow hallway was dimly lit by yellow bulbs, casting shadows on the stained walls. All the rooms on the left were securely locked. Only room 4, at the far end, was still lit, its door slightly ajar, as if waiting. Ethan hesitated, gripping the key ring tightly. He didn't believe in ghosts, but for the first time, he felt a chill crawl down his spine. And then, from behind room 4's door, came a soft sound, like a breeze slipping through. Ethan. He whipped his head around. No one. But the voice lingered, gentle, as if it came from the other side of life. Ethan slammed the office door shut, hands still shaking. Though he tried to ignore the eerie warning from the previous guard, the image of room 4's ajar door and the light spilling from within haunted him. He powered on the computer and logged into the security system. 6 camera feeds came up, covering all areas of the mortuary. Everything appeared normal, except the West Wing hallway camera, the one facing room 4. Its signal was flickering. Ethan frowned, adjusted the antenna, but nothing changed. The feed flickered for a few seconds, then went completely black. Right then, the hallway lights outside also went out. The control room vibrated slightly, as if someone had walked past the wall. Ethan jumped up, grabbed the flashlight. In that brief moment of darkness, he heard a sound, faint scraping, like fingernails lightly dragging across the window pane, slow and steady. Ethan. A woman's voice, whispering, as if coming from the other side of the door. Ethan's heart skipped. He lunged for the flashlight and shone it through the small window on the door. No one there. Just a faint handprint. Cold, delicate, the size of a woman's hand, slowly fading into the misted glass. He backed away, trembling, collapsing into the chair, trying to reason it away. Maybe it's the wind, or someone is messing with me. It can't be real. But the disturbances weren't over. Room 4's door, 2 hallways away, suddenly flung wide open. The camera snapped back on. Ethan froze as he saw it on screen. A woman in a white dress standing in the doorway, head bowed, hair covering her face, completely still. No motion detection, no footstep sounds, no thermal signal. But she was there. Ethan rewound the footage, frame by frame, and then he saw it. From the moment the light in room 4 came on, that figure had been there all along, just so still. The naked eye had missed it. Her face slowly lifted, eyes wide open, pitch black. Her lips pressed tight, then began to move. You see me now. At that moment, the entire power system shut down. The screen went black. A static buzz hissed through the speakers, even though Ethan hadn't turned them on. In complete darkness, footsteps echoed, closer and closer, slow, light, but clear. Click. The doorknob of the control room turned gently. Ethan froze. The door was still locked. He didn't dare breathe. Ethan. This time, the voice came from right behind him. The control room door remained shut, but the handle turned, as if someone outside was trying to open it. Ethan backed away, his heart thundering in his chest. He gasped in the darkness, not daring to make a sound. And then, the voice returned, this time, right beside his ear. No barrier, no echo. Ethan, I'm so cold, he screamed, turned on the flashlight, and swept it around the room. No one. Everything was just as it had been. But on the floor, water had pooled, forming the shape of wet footprints, step by step, leading from the corner to just behind him. Trembling, Ethan pulled out his phone, trying to call for help. But the screen only displayed a single message from an unknown number. She was never allowed to leave. And now, She's chosen you." The message vanished within 2 seconds, before Ethan could even touch the screen. Suddenly, the hallway lights flickered, then lit up again. Ethan glanced out the window slot and saw room 4's door wide open. A cold, pale blue light spilled across the tiles. And standing in the center of that glow, she was still there. The woman in the white dress, hair covering her face, arms limp at her sides, blood faintly soaking through the hem. As if hypnotized, Ethan opened the control room door, his feet stumbling toward room 4. He didn't know why, but his body no longer obeyed reason, like it were being pulled by invisible strings. With every step, memories faded, as though something was draining the life out of him. As he neared room 4, the door slammed shut behind him. The room was icy. Inside, a body drawer sat slightly ajar, and on the table lay an old brown file folder. Ethan reached for it with shaking hands. The first page read, "Lena M. Caldwell, female, 22 years old. Deceased June 16th, last year. Status, unidentified, no next of kin. Held in room 4, temporary." He flipped to the last page. A photo ID slipped out. He picked it up and froze. It was her. The face in the photo was smiling, not terrifying, not bloody. Just a young woman with gentle eyes and soft dimples. But beneath the picture, scribbled in red ink, "Don't let me be forgotten." At that moment, Ethan heard soft laughter behind him. He turned. She was standing there, not with matted hair or a blood-stained face, but the real face from the photo, tears rolling down her cheeks. "Thank you for finding me." The room quivered. The light went out. Ethan collapsed. Ethan awoke as sunlight streamed through the mortuary window. Everything appeared normal. Lights on, doors shut. No sign of the nightmare from the night before. He stepped out of room 4, still clutching Lena Caldwell's folder. He didn't know why, but his mind was filled with only one feeling: emptiness. Ethan never reported the shift. He walked away from the mortuary without looking back, without saying a word to the next guard. That night, and for many nights after, he couldn't sleep. The images kept replaying: Lena's sorrowful eyes, the final smile in the photo, and her words, "Don't let me be forgotten." He tried to look up Lena Caldwell's death records, but there was nothing. No forensic reports, no ID, no explanation for why she'd remained in room 4 for over a year, unnoticed. Weeks later, Ethan returned to Blackwood Mortuary, not to work, but drawn by something unexplainable. But the place was shut down. A wooden sign hung loosely on the gate, temporarily closed for renovation. He asked the locals nearby, but they all said the same thing: that mortuary's been abandoned for over 5 years. Ethan stood in stunned silence. Everything he experienced had happened in a place that no longer existed. That night, exactly at 3 a.m., someone knocked at Ethan's apartment door. Knock, knock. He got up and opened it, just a crack. On the floor, placed neatly, was an old file folder. The label read, "Ethan R. Cole, Final Replacement." Ryan was a technician specializing in security surveillance system installations. His job often took him to places most people wouldn't go near: abandoned hospitals, remote factories deep in the woods, and even mortuaries. That night, Ryan received an urgent assignment: install an infrared camera system at St. Elric Mortuary, an old facility about to be upgraded for overnight operations. They needed 24/7 surveillance coverage. "Just test the signal and get out," he muttered, carrying a box of equipment past the rusted gate. The building was icy cold. A long corridor stretched ahead, lit by dim yellow lights. The air was thick with the scent of disinfectant and rotting wood. Ryan installed 4 cameras, connected them to his laptop for a quick test. Everything checked out until he switched to camera 3, facing the cold storage room. The screen displayed normally for a few seconds, then flickered. He squinted. The dark wood coffin in the center of the room had just moved. No mistake. He rewound the footage. Clearly, the lid of the coffin lifted slightly, then settled back down. No sound, no one else in the room, but the movement was real. Ryan frowned. Light distortion? Image shake? Then the lid moved again, this time more noticeably. He immediately activated full recording mode, zoomed in. Under the infrared lens, the coffin lid was trembling, like something was thumping from inside. Then the screen went black. "Signal lost?" Ryan whispered. But the connection was still active. When the feed returned, the coffin was now fully open. No one was in the room. But in the bottom corner of the frame, a system message appeared automatically. "Motion detected at 3 a.m. Location directly behind you." Ryan spun around. No one. But in the laptop's reflection, a white figure was standing directly behind him. Ryan froze in front of the laptop. The line, "Motion detected at 3 a.m. Location directly behind you," continued to blink. His heart pounded. He spun around again. Nothing. Just an empty hallway, the fluorescent lights above humming faintly. But when he glanced back at the screen, the faint white figure still stood reflected behind him. Ryan swept his flashlight around. Nothing. No breath. No shadow. But the chill crawling down his spine wasn't from the air. It was instinct, screaming that something was wrong. He backed up, slumped into the chair, breathing hard, trying to steady himself as he replayed the footage from before the signal dropped. Timestamp: 2:57, camera 3, cold storage room. Ryan slowed the footage. At 2:58 a.m., the coffin lid shifted. At 2:59, it trembled violently. At exactly 3 a.m., the lid burst open. In the brief 2 seconds before the signal cut out, a pale hand reached out from inside, fingers curled, nails blackened as if charred. Then, the image vanished. But what truly shook Ryan wasn't the hand. It was the final frame, lasting just half a second. A face pressed up against the camera, no eyes, only 2 gaping black sockets, and a mouth wide open, screaming silently. Ryan scrambled to rewind and see it again, but that frame was gone. The video file only played up to 02:59:58. The rest showed as data error. Unwilling to believe it, Ryan checked the backup directory. Every auto-recorded file from 3 a.m. to 3 a.m. 5 minutes had vanished. No trace, no system log. He switched back to the live feed from camera 3. The coffin was closed again, as if nothing had ever happened. Panic surged. Ryan leapt up, packing his gear. But as he reached the control room door, the facility lights began to flicker. The main entrance door he had shut earlier creaked open by itself. Clicks echoed down the hallway. He aimed his flashlight. Wet footprints stretched from the cold storage room, right to his door. Ryan gasped. He turned to camera 1, the hallway's closest angle, and saw himself standing inside the control room, but not facing the camera. The Ryan on screen had his back turned, standing still, and resting on his right shoulder was a pale hand. Ryan stood frozen in front of the screen. The image on camera 1 was crystal clear, a version of himself, standing with his back to the lens, unmoving, and on his shoulder. A pale white hand slowly tightening its grip. But what was stranger, Ryan was standing right here, at the screen, and felt nothing at all. He yanked the laptop's power cable, intending to leave immediately, but the laptop flickered back on, despite having no power connection. The screen began playing a video on its own. No title, no folder, no recording history. The footage showed a dark room, bathed in a faint red glow. The dark wooden coffin lay in the center. The camera zoomed in slowly. The lid was open, and inside, there was no corpse. Instead, a mirror. The mirror covered the entire base of the coffin. The camera inched closer. In the reflection was someone being pulled downward, gripping the coffin's edge, screaming silently, face twisted in pure terror, and that someone was Ryan. The video ended on a final frame. Ryan was completely dragged into the mirror, leaving behind only the laptop on the cold storage room floor. Ryan shivered, glancing around. No one. But now, his face was reflected in the laptop screen, even though no webcam was turned on. He started to run, but the door slammed shut behind him. The lights died. Darkness swallowed the room. A whisper echoed from deep within the corridor. "You saw what you shouldn't have. We buried that recording a year ago. But you woke it up." Bare feet scraped slowly across the tiled floor. Click, clack, click, clack, getting closer. Ryan flicked on his flashlight. In front of him, the cold storage room door stood ajar. Dim hallway light spilled in, casting a glow on the same coffin from earlier. But now, it was no longer empty. A body lay inside, and unmistakably, it was him. Ryan's skin was pale, his eyes wide open, mouth agape. And on the laptop next to the coffin, the screen displayed, "Recording complete, 3 a.m." In that instant, a freezing hand rested on Ryan's shoulder. He didn't have time to turn around. The next morning, a different team of technicians was dispatched to St. Elric Mortuary to take over the unfinished job. They found the cold storage room door wide open, the power completely cut, and in the center of the frigid room, a laptop still running. The laptop displayed a single video, exactly 3 minutes long. In the footage, Ryan was installing the cameras as usual, but as it neared the end, his expression shifted from focused to confused to terrified. In the final second, Ryan shouted something, then vanished from the frame, as if pulled backward into the void behind the camera. No sound, not even ambient noise, just video. Strangely, none of the night guards recalled letting Ryan in. There was no record of him on the technician roster for that night. All they found was a faded file, handwritten in red ink. Footage captured at the wrong time. Subject duplicated. Weeks later, a night shift worker at St. Elric accidentally opened the surveillance feed at 3 a.m. He froze. There, on the screen, a man in a technician uniform installing a camera inside the cold storage room. The figure, the posture, it was identical to Ryan, but the camera never recorded him entering or leaving. Every night, exactly at 3 a.m., the image reappears, always the same, unchanged, like a tape stuck in an endless loop. And in the bottom corner of the frame, the familiar line appeared once more. Motion detected. Location, directly behind you. 3 stories, 3 fates, and 3 nights that should never be repeated. But perhaps the most terrifying thing isn't the knocking, the shadows, or the missing footage. It's the silence that follows. Because once you've seen them, once you've heard the voices calling from the other side, you'll forever carry a part of them in your memory. If you've made it this far, thank you for bravely walking this journey with us. And if these stories made your skin crawl, or you simply couldn't look away, hit that subscribe button to keep joining us on sleepless nights to come. Leave a like if you felt a chill. Comment below with the story that haunted you the most, or share a strange experience you've had yourself. This isn't the end, because nightmares often begin the moment the video stops. We'll see you again, where the lights flicker and the cameras are still rolling.